Well, welcome everybody to our online program on addiction and recovery from the Sunshine Coast Health Center up here in Powell River, BC. And we've been talking about the history of addiction and treatment. And research has taught us that people will treat addiction depending on how they make sense of it and what the cultural interpretation is. So that's why treatment varies depending on a lot of times what culture you're from, what era you're from. So, and we've talked on this online program about Towns Hospital and Charles Towns' belief that by drinking excessively, the person was poisoned. So it was a very biological phenomenon. We've talked about Harry Tiebow's psychoanalytic interpretation, a Freudian psychology interpretation of this defiant narcissism of the alcoholic that needed to be tamed. We've talked about the Minnesota model and its belief, very similar to the 12-step program, but also that it was, essentially a disease-based. And now we'll zip up and look at some of the more modern scientific interpretations. And it's kind of curious, right? That really, the science had not informed treatment really that much. And what happened was the addiction field was split off from the mental health field. And mental health experts were quite happy about this. There's Irving Yalom, the great psychiatrist. He talks about working with alcoholics, and he concluded that he was quite happy to leave the alcoholics to Alcoholics Anonymous. So mental health professionals, they were quite happy not to have to deal with alcoholics. And so there became this sort of bizarre phenomenon where if you had an alcohol problem, you would see the alcohol counselor. And if you had a mental health problem, you'd see the mental health counselor. And then if you had both, then the mental health person would say, well, go get treatment for your alcoholism, and then the alcohol person would say, no, you have mental health issues, go get treatment from the mental health people, and sadly a lot of people slip through the cracks. Now things are changing. Now in the province of British Columbia, for example, if you want to be a counselor in any of the government facilities, they will demand at least a master's degree in mental health counseling. So everybody will have training now to deal, if they have depression, they can deal with depression. If they have an addiction, they can deal with an addiction. It's all part of mental health. In fact, they call it mental health and addictions. So things are changing. Training programs now, more and more we find, universities are offering specialty programs, and even at the University of Toronto you can get a PhD now in addiction studies. So things are changing, and what that means is the science is starting to really come to the fore in the addiction field. And in the science, we have now many scientifically based, or evidence-based programs. And so, for example, probably the most famous one today is motivational therapy. Could be motivational interviewing, motivational enhancement therapy, various names. But the idea of trying to help motivate the person to overcome their addiction. Alan Marlett's work in relapse prevention was seminal in that he was helping people through his sort of cognitive behavioral therapy, added with Bandura stuff, to help people, deal with cravings and situations that may trigger using, things like that. I just was on the phone a few weeks ago to Washington, D.C., and they're implementing now community reinforcement, which is one of the evidence-based therapies that's based more on the scientific concept known as behaviorism. So we can see all this science come to bear, and regardless of what you think of the harm reduction idea, it is a scientifically based approach. That its research is the foundation for it. So very different, for example, than say the Minnesota model or the 12-step program, right? So now science has come to bear, and so there's this big change now in treatment. We're now, a lot of people now are demanding that there be evidence to support the kind of treatment they're receiving, and that outcome studies be published. And this is very different in the field. For decades, no one's really seemed to know what was going on in the addiction treatment field. It's kind of strange, but it was like, okay, we'll send this person there, and just don't tell me about what's going on, and just fix them by the time they leave. But now, consumers are becoming a lot more savvy, and so they're demanding, to understand, what is the philosophical basis? How is it designed? Is there scientific evidence to support this? What are the outcome studies like? Right? All of these things now are informing this new way of treating addictions. So at any rate, that's it for our online program, our very brief and simplistic history of addiction treatment. Anyway, we'll be back next time with a new topic.